Welcome to the Empowered Women Life Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Karen Bashford. This podcast is for every woman who has ever felt limited by her past, silenced by trauma, or held back by society's expectations. Each week, we will share powerful stories, expert insights, and practical tools to help you become the leader of your own life. Today, I'm talking about the books and the cards that have helped me on my journey to where I am today. But it's also to talk about the experiences I've had that have led me to today, and being able to be in a position to share what I know and what I've experienced, and to also help you have a better understanding so that you can continue your healing journey, or even start it if you're just at the beginning. I've had a long time to practice, and I know that with knowledge and wisdom, I could have made totally different decisions. However, that wouldn't have served me now, because I need to be where I am and having done that journey to become me. So, where do I start? Well, my background is banking. I spent over 20 years in banking, and lessons I learned from that was that we all have behaviors around money. Hence why I wrote What's Your Money Personality, and also shared a video about the money personalities. However, not only did I learn from working within the bank and dealing with customers, especially when it came to lending and having to deal with overdrafts and personal loans and even business loans, dealing with customers who had gone overdrawn unintentionally, or perhaps something had happened and they needed to take money out unexpectedly and it put them into overdraft. So I got to know how they behaved, and consequently the impressions they gave because of how they responded to my questions, how they were when they weren't able to get what they wanted, or even how they were when they had an agreement and it was okay for them to borrow that money, whatever it was for. But it taught me a lot. But I also want to acknowledge the many books that I read after I'd left the bank to have a better understanding, because I was very much focused on money mindset when I first started as a coach. And I used to run workshops for women to understand their behavior around money, where it was likely to have begun, and also to give them an understanding of financial matters, because we weren't taught how to manage money. It was assumed that we knew how to manage money. And even nowadays, it's still a case of hit and miss. Regretfully, some people can manage to do very well in organising their life and their financial matters, whereas others struggle and really have situations where they do very, very well, and then they hit a bad spot and then they do well again. But there's no rhyme or reason to it. So my favourite was The Richest Man in Babylon. I loved this book and I've read it so many times. It really showed me quite how we could, through behaviour, create a future that would serve us and that would give us the ability to be financially secure. As I said, I worked for a bank, so I knew the ins and outs of savings and investment. And I've also been a financial advisor, so I knew what to do. But that didn't stop me from screwing up my finances. And this book really highlighted to me where I was going wrong sometimes, but other times it just reminded me that I had to just allow myself to experience and learn from the experience. So that's The Richest Man in Babylon. Another one that I really found helpful was Resolving Money Conflicts in Your Life and Relationships, and it's Money Harmony. Now, this book has been around for God knows how many years. I brought it probably, 30 years ago. That's how old it is. And it sat on my bookshelf, and it comes out and then it goes back and then it comes out again, because there's always something that I can learn from it, especially if it's very much about resolving money conflicts in life and relationships. And the great thing about it is you can flip through it and there's something that will come up around confidence, self-confidence and money. And it's a really useful book to highlight the different behaviours we have. And I'm very much aware that I can be the cat who just loves to go and spend money on friends or on myself when I've got it. But I'm also one of those, a bit like I suppose you could call me a hamster. Whereas when I don't have money, I just do not want to spend. It's like there's this fear of, well, if I spend the last penny, where does the rest come from? And that's how my life has been, that boom and bust, I suppose you could say. And it's taught me a lot about myself, about my relationship with money, and to be able to help other women change their relationship with money. And the great thing about it is when you start to realize your money behavior and you look back, there's points in your life where it really stands out that if you're overstressed, if you're really worried, even if you don't have much money, you could land up spending it to feel better, because spending money gives you a high. Whether it's spending money on food or on clothes or just going out entertaining yourself or somebody else, it gives you that high, that dopamine fix. That's why quite often people that don't have money will still spend money, because it does give you that high. But this book was really, really helpful in explaining to me how people behaved, why they behaved as they did, and what they could do about changing that behavior. And money does not give you happiness. Money just makes your life a lot easier, especially if you're not worrying about where the next penny is coming from, or what happens if you don't get the money together to pay the rent or the mortgage or something like that. Of course, that's going to make your life easier and happier. But money does not give you happiness. Only you can give yourself happiness. So that's what I learned from that book, or one of the many things I learned from that book. Another favourite I have is Recession Proof Money Makeover, and it's Wired for Wealth. As you can see, lots and lots of little markers in it. Very, very helpful. And again, it explains why we compulsively shop, how to make money, and obviously money makes money if you do something with it rather than just spend it. All the beliefs you have about money. And truthfully, it's the science and psychology of money scripts that basically we mess up our lives with. I know for a fact my money scripts, to an extent, come from my parents. My father would hoard money. He would hate having to spend money. Whereas my mother was a squirrel, in the sense of she would spend money, but she'd save money and she'd invest money. So I've got a father that would not spend. I've got a mother who was very good. In actual fact, the funny thing was, in the days when my parents were youngish and managing their money, they'd have people come round to talk to them about financial matters, and they'd always talk to my father. And the funny part about it was they'd ignore my mother, and yet it was always my mother that made those decisions about money. And it was so interesting to hear the stories that they would share, especially my mother after my father passed, and she'd want to talk about him. That on occasion, the man would be talking about finances to my father, because it was always men in those days when my parents were younger, telling the man all about the policy or what they could do with their money. And my father would say, well, there's no point in telling me. You'd have to talk to my wife. She knows all about it. And that was the kind of relationship my parents had. And interestingly, I had that same relationship with my two partners. I took after my mother, but I also know that emotionally, money was a happy fix for me. So that's where my wisdom about money, a lot of it comes from, is my banking time, learning from my parents, and obviously reading books that highlight how you can manage money, the money mindset and such like. I would also point out that there are cards that you can buy that will help you understand your money mindset better and how you can start to build a better relationship with money. And there are loads and loads of books you can get that will help you. I've probably got something like 15 different books about the money mindset and such. I love reading those kinds of books. I learned so much from them, even though I've got this wealth of experience. It helps to always learn more. It gives you a different perspective. So they're the books that I think stand out the most for me for learning about money and money behaviors. Sorry, my books are just about to go and fall on the floor. Another thing that I've discovered, obviously, is how you talk to your body and how your body talks to you. Now, I'm a psychic. I can actually pick up on other people's energies. I can pick up on what their bodies are communicating through my own body. It can be quite painful at times if I'm choosing to connect with somebody. But I learned a lot through reading books, and one of them is obviously Louise Hay, and You Can Heal Your Body is a brilliant one. And I read that and used that a lot initially. But one of my favorites is Your Body's Telling You, Love Yourself. And this is full of brilliant wisdom on the various things like indigestion. It's defined as a difficulty or discomfort in the digesting of food. And it's caused by the overconsumption of food or alcohol. However, the metaphysical reason behind it is you are fed up with someone or a situation that's weighing heavy on you. And it's things like that that really highlighted to me when my body started to deteriorate because of the antibiotic poisoning I went through. And I was finding that I was struggling to eat certain foods, or most foods, in fact, how much my body was communicating to tell me what was wrong. Now, I do know my bladder cancer was because I was pissed off with my relationship with my husband. Yes, smoking contributed to it, but it was interesting that at the time when I had the bladder cancer, I was totally pissed off with my relationship. As soon as I started to change that, my body began to get better. All the little niggly problems I had started to go away. I got rid of the cancer simply because my surgeon was very, very good at removing it. However, that didn't stop me having to go back for checkups, which were very, very painful, because he would put a camera into my bladder. Painful, to say the least. And I actually drew a line probably 3 years after starting the treatment for the cancer, because it was causing me so many problems. I decided that, well, as long as I'm conscious of the fact that if I start getting pissed off with something, I'm likely to get cancer again in my bladder. So obviously I was very much aware of what was going on in my life with regards to that, because I certainly didn't want bladder cancer again. The actual bladder cancer itself was nothing in comparison to the checkups I had to go through. So it's realizing that we have our bodies able to tell us when something's wrong. Louise Hay, as I say, was absolutely a godsend at times, because it gave me an understanding as I was going through my marriage and then my partnership, just how much I put my body under. But a lot of that was from hindsight. At the time, I wasn't aware of what I was actually doing to myself by staying in the relationships. I do consider my autoimmune disease, which was Langerhans cell histosis, which meant that basically my body was thinking it had bacteria in it in places bacteria would not be unless I physically cut myself. And yet it decided there was bacteria there. So consequently, it was eating itself because it assumed there was bacteria. Again, quite painful at times. I found that I couldn't breathe. One of the things I can sympathize with anyone who has panic attacks or who suffers from high levels of anxiety is that inability to breathe enough. Even asthma person, I can fully appreciate how horrifying it is to suddenly find you cannot breathe, because one of the places that autoimmune disease attacked in my body was my lungs. And that was the first warning I had that something was wrong, was when my lungs stopped working effectively. I would cycle to work, and within a space of 2 days, I couldn't cycle. My breathing had got so bad, I could not cycle. I could not walk upstairs without having to stop. Walking up a hill was hilarious. I would probably do about 10 steps and have to stop. And I lived on the top floor of a flat. So even getting up to my own flat was a struggle. So I do understand when somebody says they have asthma or have anxiety and panic attacks. I know the horror of not being able to breathe effectively. And it is really, really scary. And as I say, with hindsight, you can learn an awful lot about what your body has been communicating with you. But instead of relying on hindsight, I now rely on my body and listening to it to tell me what's wrong. And one of the things that I found really, really helpful was the ideology, and that's impact that your body's health has on your eyes. I found this book because I was very much aware my cat's eyes were starting to change. She was getting black in certain areas, or there was a heavy yellow. And I knew from experience, having been to a mind body show where they were actually taking photos of your eyes and were detailing the problems within your body and your health, I knew that it would be a good pointer for me to actually look at what the eyes were telling me from my cat. And it was highly, highly useful for her, at least, and saved me a lot of worry, to discover that it was her kidneys, her liver were not functioning properly. I've been able to treat that through homeopathy, and now she's so much better, to the point where she's like a little kitten at times. She's not in that state of being uncomfortable anymore. But I wouldn't have necessarily known that without this book, because this book, as you can see on the back, I don't know if you can see it, details various parts of the body over here. You've got the eyes, you've got the lips, heart. No, not heart. It could be the liver. Yeah, you've got the liver, you've got the spine, kidneys. Oh, it patterns them off. You can't really see it because there's too much light coming through the window onto the screen. That's it. Now you can see it there. So there you are. But that is what your eyes can tell you, which part is at fault. So this, you see these black areas here. She was starting to get that. And all down here where this whitish is, she was having it yellow. So I learned a lot from this. And next, the body clock, my favourite at the moment anyway. I get lots of favourite books. The body clock, traditional Chinese medicine. The body clock is so useful because it will tell you, where is it? Which one am I looking for? Where's the page I'm looking for? This one. I love this one. This is your teeth. This tells you all about the problems that you could have through your teeth. So if your teeth are playing you up, it could be that there's an organ in your body that's out of alignment, that's blocked in some way, either emotionally or the meridians are blocked because you're doing things that don't make you happy, or you're trying to do too much and your body's going, you're putting me under too much stress. But it's also brilliant because it will actually tell you, I don't know if you're like me, I have a tendency to wake at certain times of the night. I wake and I go back to sleep. But again, if you can see it, because the light is terrible. Let's change arms, that's it. Yeah, you can see there's a clock. Oh, no, it's not focusing. That's it. You can see you've got a clock. And it's telling you the various times of the day. We actually have our organs work at the best time of day or night, depending on the function of that organ. So for the liver, the most effective time for it to be operating, the liver would be something, because I've had jaundice, so I know all about the liver and I know how congested it had become because of my gallbladder. But the liver is about, believe it or not, transformation, renewal, and change. And notice the time. It is 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. is its strongest activity. And 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. is its weakest activity. And I used to always wake between 1 and 3. And that was even before I got the jaundice. So my liver was already telling me it was congested, that it needed assistance. Another one is the lungs. Again, transformation. But you've got detachment and courage, letting go, creativity. Now, the camera's not picking up very well because I'm moving it too much. But again, it's 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. is its strongest activity. So it takes over from the liver. And then the weakest point is 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And our lungs actually provide us with direct and relatively unprotected contact with our surroundings. We forge a new link with our environment with every breath we take. And the interesting thing about it is, it takes care of the volatile materials while the colon deals with solid matters. So basically, it deals with our air and the releasing of the carbon dioxide and the intake of oxygen. And the emotions of the lungs are for grief and sorrow, including melancholy and depression. People with lung complaints often have a mournful disposition, which shows itself more clearly in moments of excitement. A tendency to cry is often a sign of hidden lung weakness. Now, I know that I can cry nowadays, whereas before I couldn't do. I wouldn't cry for the life of me. It didn't matter how upset I was, I could not cry. But I now recognize that was because I was holding on to so much grief and sorrow, not only from the loss of my grandparents, the loss of a favourite pet, but also the number of times that I moved and lost friends, that if I'd had time to make true friends, or the loss of my ability to just go and do things that I wanted to do because I had a responsibility to a younger sister at that point, and I couldn't just go and do what I wanted to do. So I held a lot in my lungs. And it was only in allowing myself the time and space to give myself permission to grieve for me and all the things that I felt I had missed out on, did my lungs actually improve. And I no longer hold that grief, but now I can cry, but I cry for a reason. I know why I'm crying. And that is an absolute blessing. I'm conscious of how long I've been talking for, and I've loved every minute of sharing with you. And we've literally just touched on so few of the books that I now utilize or have that I pull upon to be able to help myself or to help others. So I'm going to stop here, but I will obviously be back to share again in the future shortly. In the meantime, take care of yourself. Reach out. I'm available to talk to you if you wish to know more about how you can help yourself heal yourself. Thank you for watching.